Sanding. One of the most important steps in the process. One of the most beautiful things about using resin products is you never have to sand them. When they come out of the mold, the surface is absolutely perfect. There's no prep work needed other than to clean any type of contaminants and oil off it. The only time and the only thing that you will be sanding, of course, is the wood in our hybrid products. Or if you're using resin with wood in combinations as crown molding and building cabinet doors and cabinetry. But the resin, you never have to sand. All you need to do is clean and make sure all contaminants are removed from it. Now the three things that we use most is, we like the 3M products. From left to right, we use the 3M foam pad. We will also use the 3M scuffing pad, and we'll use wet and dry sandpaper from 3M. Step 2, cleaning with acetone. This is probably one of the most important steps that a lot of people have a tendency to get a little laxed on. If you don't get the contaminants and the oils from your skin and fingers off the material, you're going to have lifting issues later on when you apply your glazes and stains. So get some latex gloves, use a terry towel, and get some virgin acetone, and literally apply the acetone to the material and making sure you get everything nice and clean. Now, the next step is going to be primering, and we'll be going into that next. Step 3, the primering stage. Now, we've sanded, we've prepped the material, and now we've applied our primer. Here's the reason why we primer the material either in a pale yellow, which is what you see here, or a tinted beige. This is our base coat that we will be using for all the colors that we produce here at Pearlworks. In order for you to get an even consistent color between the resin and the wood, we primer everything first. Now what this does, this actually will seal the pores of the wood. And all fine finishers, when they ever apply a stain, they always seal the wood. And the reason why they seal the wood, or the pores of the wood, is because if you don't, you're going to get blotchiness. Because depending on different parts of the wood, you're going to have some areas that are more porous than others. The more porous areas are going to collect more stain and become darker, and the more dense areas will become lighter. So if you're going to do a fine finish, all finishers will take and seal the pores of the wood. The beauty about resin, it's a non-porous material. You don't have to do that. We primer the material because what we're trying to do is get an even base coat between the resin and the wood so that when you apply your stain, you have a perfect blend. Now what we've done here is we've just applied the pale yellow, because the color that we're going to be staining is called our cocoa berry, and that's going to be step number 4. Now, after we've primed, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take all of our sandpapers or our sanding pads, the optional distressing. This is not a step that you have to do. It is an option, and it's distressing the material to give you that old world look. When we do most of our distressing, we use these basic 5 tools. Starting from left to right, we're using the little slag hammers that welders use. If you notice that the slag hammers, the difference between the two is one has a sharp point and one has a blunt point. And all that does is it makes 2 different size holes. The second to the right, which is the little chain with the little nuts and bolts, is a slapping tool that we use to give large panels indentations. We also have a utility knife, and we use a flat wood scraper, which is the very last tool on the right. Now you're going to notice that Sergio is actually just kind of beating up the material on the wood using the razor part of the slag hammer. And he'll also use the other end to create some holes. Now distressing is kind of an individual procedure where you can do as little or as much as you want. Now as you can see, what we're doing now is we're trying to create like little wormholes using the different points of the slag hammer. Okay, Sergio, you're going to use the, which tool next? The slapping tool? Okay, now this is our slapping tool. Go ahead. Now, the slapping tool creates little indentations. Most of the time it's used for big flat panels of wood where we want to put a little bit of indentations in. Okay, next tool, Sergio. We're going to be using our scraper. Now this is just a flat wood scraper that we use. And basically what we do is we will go over the little tiny holes that we made with the slag hammer, and we're just distressing the material. And again, as little or as much as you want. Now we're going to do a lot of this particular piece because we want to overemphasize what we're doing here. Okay. The next tool is going to be our razor knife. And Sergio is actually going to go in and he's just going to cut and create little slices to make it look like it's distressed and beat up. Okay, those are the usages of all the 5 tools that we do. This step is optional. If you don't want to do this, you skip it, but if you want to do the distress look, these are the basic 5 tools and the usages for each one. Now we're going to be getting to our staining. Now, let's have a recap. We've done our sanding, we've done our primering, and we've done our cleaning. So, right now, all this piece needs to do is apply some stain. Now, here's the combination that we're using. We're using our water base, pale yellow primer, and our cocoa berry stain. Sergio, go ahead and put the first coat of stain on and show us exactly how we're going to be doing this. Now, if you notice what Sergio's doing, all we're trying to do is get the stain on the material and all the cracks and crevices. Now, the staining process, especially if you're blending and trying to match color, we always recommend 2 coats. We like 2 coats for one reason. It gives you the ability to slowly make your finish darker. All of the colors that you see here made by Pearlworks, the cocoa berry and some of our other stain colors, are a heavily tinted base color. The reason why they're done that way is because you can put a thin coat on and go from light, and as you put on more material, you can slowly make the same color darker. Now, what we're trying to do now is just get the material on and trying to get it even. And what Sergio is going to be doing, once he does this, is we're going to be using the terry cloth rag and wiping it off and on to get different shades and colors. So why don't we just go ahead and watch Sergio for a while, and you can take in this technique. Now here for the example, we are using a brush. If you've got large areas, you're going to want to spray it in a sprayer because it just makes it easier to get the material on quicker. Now if you notice what Sergio's doing now, we're wiping off most of the material. And the reason why we're doing this is because we're trying to get some contrast in the color between light and dark. Because if you look at traditional old finishes, nothing is exactly even in color. You've got light areas and you've got dark areas. And that's what kind of gives the richness to the material. And if you'll notice here, a lot of the stain stays in the cracks and the crevices, which we want. Now Sergio's coming back with the same brush. It doesn't have a lot of stain on it. And all he's doing is he's applying a light coat of material or stain and getting the sheen or the shade of color that he wants. Now this particular process can be a little bit time consuming because what you're trying to do is get the color on evenly, and of course wiping the areas away that you want it to be lighter and leaving the areas with more stain that you want to be darker.